All right, we're back. Frankie from Flatbush. From Frankie from Flatbush headquarters. Now, this one's going to be a little different. And the first thing I'd like to say, Frankie from Flatbush, Frankie, is not suicidal. Okay, I do not want to take my own life. I'm very happy, even though I'm a Jet fan. So so if you hear some news, Frankie from Flatbush took his own life, you're going to have to question it because in this video, we're going to talk about some very powerful entities, some very powerful corporations and interests, and they might not like what I have to say about things. And so I just wanted to say right up front that that's the case. And so if something happens to old Frankie, you may want to look into it. Now, as I said, this video is going to be a little bit different than what we normally do, but it will get back to the Jets and Jets media and sort of media in general about sports and the Jets. But it's just going to take a little bit of a time to explain sort of the context. So we'll do that right after this.
Then you have the media, not just the news media. Let's include them all. The media are almost literally exploding with bullshit because they're located right at the crossroads of all the other bullshit. The media are made up of equal parts advertising, politics, business, public relations, and show business. These people are sitting right at bullshit junction. There's enough bullshit in the media for Texas to open a branch office. And you still have enough left over to start 2 law firms and a Christian bookstore. Because...
All right, now what we need to do, we need to understand the changing landscape of the sports media world. And it's rapidly changing quite drastically in 2024 and beyond, of course. And so I thought it would be worthwhile to see how things are changing. Now, this type of video could be a 3-hour documentary, but I'm going to do a condensed version here because I think we can do a condensed version and kind of get the understanding of what's happening without, doing a full, a 3-hour documentary that no one's going to watch. All right, so let's see what we're talking about. So now we're going to talk about the media landscape. What is going on with the media? You hear about the media. Well, what does that really mean? What does that really mean? Well, one of the things you need to understand if you're going to understand the media, you have to understand who owns the media. This is an old version. We're going to go to a newer version. But this illustration here shows that there's 6 companies. They own 90 to 95% of the media that you consume. 6 global companies. And there's an update to this. It doesn't get better. Now, this goes back to the Telecommunications Act of 1996, I believe it is. It could be repealed at any time, but that basically allowed for conglomeration of media like we're seeing. And so you see these 6 big companies, and they own all of the websites, TV channels, magazines, books, book publishing companies, record companies, music, movies, you name it, shows, you name it. The 6 companies own them. And so here's the sort of updated version. Now, this isn't as comprehensive, but this gives you a clearer, sort of vision of what's going on. So, if you wonder why, then it has repercussion. If you wonder why CNN is the way it is, it's because it's owned by Time Warner, one of 6 giant global corporations, and those global corporations have objectives. Those objectives do not include keeping you informed. They want to, do certain things, but, making sure you're an informed citizen is not really their job. Their job is to enhance value for shareholders, and Fox is over here, so it's not a partisan thing. And this is just sort of the simpler version, but you can kind of see it better on this thing here. All of the networks are here. So, you say, why is Connor Hughes the way he is? Why is Zach Rosenblatt the way he is? Why is Dirty Diana Rossini the way she is? It's because they work for companies that are ultimately owned by these six companies: Sony, News Corp, Time Warner, Viacom, Disney, Comcast. Okay. And so they have a job to do. Why is Dick Chimney the way he is? It's because he works for ESPN, which is a Disney company, and Disney has corporate objectives. And Dick Chimney does the job that ESPN and Disney wants him to do. It's not to make you an informed Jets fan. That's not the job. And so a lot of people are questioning this structure right now, and you are seeing some things happen. We just had a presidential election, and a lot of people who follow these companies and these media outlets exclusively were very surprised by what happened in this presidential election. If you follow CNN, if you follow Fox News, if you follow NBC, and this is where you get your news from, and ABC over here, and so forth and so on, the mainstream media, you might have been surprised that Donald Trump won the election over Kamala Harris over there. However, if you're someone who consume your news via podcasts, via X, Twitter, via alternate media, via YouTube channels where you filter your news, and you listen to podcasts or video interviews like Lex Friedman, these long form, you could call them a podcast, but there's also a video version. You would have a very different picture of what's going on with these candidates, what's going on in our political process, what's going on with the voters, what's going on in the polling. So these people also control polling, for example. And if you follow the mainstream polls, like 538 is a big pollster, right? 538, Nate Silver. It's owned by one of these. I think Comcast owns 538 and owns Nate Silver. So if you followed that guy and you thought, okay, I'm following this election, you had a very different understanding about what was about to happen than if you followed the People's Pundit, Richard Barris, for example, who was actually accurate. And Richard Barris is not owned by any of these people. He's owned by the people. He's called the People's Pundit. He has like a locals channel. He has a YouTube channel and a Rumble channel. And people basically support him. He doesn't have a top-down structure. He has a bottom-up structure. And coincidentally, he was the most accurate. 538 was not accurate. Alan Lichtman was not accurate. These people who are the old media were not accurate. The new media was. Now, how does this, okay, Frankie, what does this really mean for the Jet fan after all? Well, there are similar things happening in the world of sports as in the world of politics. Let me show you. We see certain things occurring in the indie media as opposed to the traditional media in sports. For example, we're going to take a look at All City as one example, but another example is Badlands. So if you're familiar with Badlands, okay, this is owned by Joe Caporoso and Connor Rogers. Okay, and they got the Badlands podcast. They do, this is an example of a bottom up situation. They own Turn on the Jets with what's his name over there, the guy from Cortland, and they just bought the Flight Plan podcast. So we're seeing some independent media emerging here, same as in the political world, in the sports world. Would you rather watch Badlands, Flight Plan, Turn on the Jets, or SNY? I think more and more people are turning toward this group. Now, Badlands is expanding. They bought Flight Plan. Now, Flight Plan is in here because this used to be an athletic podcast. This is with Zach Rosenblach. And I guess it wasn't profitable or something happened. No, don't know what happened, but they didn't want it anymore. And so Badlands came along and said, hey, we'll take it. You can put it on our network. You can put it on our YouTube channel will promote you. You can put it, I don't know how it works. They go on Patreon or whatever their source of funding is. You can be part of our network, our little new network, the Badlands Network. And while I don't like Zach Rosenblatt in particular, and I don't think this is a particularly good product, but the idea is that the sports world is changing. The sports media landscape is changing, and we're seeing some conglomeration of indie voices here. Now we're similarly seeing something with Roundtable Sports. Now, if you're not familiar, Roundtable Sports is a I don't know how you want to put it, sort of a conglomeration. So this is Richie and the Finn's talk. What's his name? I forget these people's name. And Dan Mitchell and the other guy. The Patriots started out with the AFC East roundtable. What's the Finn's talk? JD DJ. I forget. TD Finn's talk. He's awesome. And Richie and Dan Mitchell and the Patriots guy, right? And they had the AFC roundtable, and they all had their individual channel. Well, now they're doing something called Roundtable Sports, where they're doing each and every conference in the NFL similarly. They're having roundtables, four guys, each one of them representing a team in the division, and let's have a discussion about what's going on with our teams. So that's a conglomeration, and they're doing other things. They're reaching out to other venues and doing other joint ventures. And the reason JetX is here, you got the JetX factor. They have to get with somebody. Somebody should go to Robbie and Nania and those guys and say, all right, who are you going to team up with? Because the landscape is changing. I don't think you're going to be able to stay independent completely unless you're going to be able to scale. You're going to have to combine with other people. And you see things like Chat Sports is trying to do both. So Chat Sports is here because if you notice Chat Sports, every team has a Chat Sports YouTube channel. They all sound the same. I think they all go to some kind of training and get the same kind of equipment because they all sound the same. It's kind of annoying. I don't like the Chat Sports guys, but every single team, I think, has a Chat Sports channel, so it's the same idea. Let's put all of the teams under an umbrella. In the NFL, in this case, they probably have NBA too, I guess, and make it similar enough. Brand it with our brand. This is their brand. This is the Roundtable brand. We're going to do merch. They have merch. You could get a Roundtable Sports hat and a this and a that. Chat Sports has their branding. Badlands has their branding. I think Badlands is lacking in the branding department because Badlands obviously comes from the Bruce Springsteen song about New Jersey. So they're kind of trying to, and he's from New Jersey. So that's a good song. But how many people are going to associate Badlands with what you're trying to do? Whereas Roundtable Sports makes a lot of sense branding wise, right? And same thing with Chat Sports. Like we're going to talk sports. Like it's obvious what we're doing. Badlands, not so much. But anyway, this is what's going to happen. Now, so I think this is bad. I think this is good. I think some of this is bad and some is good, but that's just my opinion. The markets are going to work this stuff out. Now, All City is another level. So this is where these people can go. What are we talking about? What is All City? What are you talking about, Frankie? Let's take a look. All City, we make it more fun to be a sports fan, they say. And this is their sort of centralized page, but they have individual cities that they brand in a specific way. Look at how they brand each and every one of them. And right now they have 5 cities: Denver, Phoenix, Chicago, Philly, Dallas. Why they chose those, I don't know. And they have a very specific way. They take out the vowels for whatever reason, for the most part. But that's their branding. And they're going to go and say, okay, look at DNVR. Every team, and you can join the community, $80 a year if you want, and you get all sorts of stuff. And this is a live podcast, I guess. Check out the latest video. Colorado offensive lineman Philip Houston and assistant George Hilo joined the Denver pregame show. Whatever, they're doing a pregame show, and and they got the Broncos, the all the Denver teams in the market. The Buffs is Colorado with Deion Sanders and Colorado State, and they got a soccer team, they got a rugby team, so forth and so on. They got all the merch, so forth and so on, and they cover their local teams with a staff. Look at all these dudes, and these are just dudes covering the team. It's not ESPN. It's not some corporate bullshit. It's this guy and this guy and this guy and this and all these guys and whoever they are. I don't know who they are, but it doesn't matter. These are Denver people covering Denver sports. This would be the equivalent of, Green Bean and Richie and, me and Buffalo Jet fan and Ian for Jet Central and Ryan and Matt and, all the people. Gunny. Okay, I probably wouldn't be on there because I'm not as big as those guys, but you get the idea where you could conglomerate things based on this. Now, and then you have Phoenix, and so here's all the Phoenix teams. Same similar thing: Cardinals, Suns, Diamondbacks, Wildcats, Sun Devils, Rising, Mercury. You get your Phoenix sports fix right here. Everything Phoenix sports right in one spot. And we're going to see if this works out. Here's Chicago, major city. You got the Bears, the Blackhawks, the Bulls, the Cubs, the White Sox, the Sky, the Fire, and the Red Stars. All these teams. And so it seems to me, and you have all these people, seems to me that this is really something that Jet X Factor could do. Really expand off of Jet X Factor and do something similar to this, because eventually somebody's going to do, here's Philly. Okay, we got a video going on here. Joel Embiid, Paul George returned to the Sixers lineup. We got the homies in a spot. We got a guy here photo bombing. I mean, look how creepy this guy is over here. But, go to a location. This is probably some Philly bar somewhere, right? And we got the homies and they're on location, so to speak. They're doing a spot. Do it. Presented by Coors Light. I mean, these people are presented by Coors Light. This is fairly big time. I mean, imagine getting us Coors Light sponsorship. That's not easy. I can't get anybody to sponsor my show, but that's not surprising. But people like Green Bean have, Bet US, which is, probably an affiliate thing. How many people can you get to sign up to go to Bet US and you get a cut? But Coors Light probably gives these guys real money just to put their logo in the bottom here. So this is real deal, and you need people. They probably have a staff of people at all city who are responsible for the marketing and could call up Coors and call up Bud Light and call up all these people, try to get a sponsorship. And that's their full-time job. And you got to pay those people and give them benefits and so forth and so on. So then you got to bring in the money. And so you got all this merch and you got, all the sign up to be, sign up for a membership. And so this is the way it's going. And eventually you see all the people here and you notice the similar branding, right? All of the images of the people have this cartoonish look to them. So the branding is all the same. So, you see these people in this kind of a thing, it's this company, right? It's good branding. And this tells you, hey, there's a live video going on right now. We can click on it and go to the live video and we can watch this video. Now you got these dudes talking about something, whatever they're talking about. Phillies, Eagles post game. All right. So they're talking about Philly, and they got to look at this background they got. So Philadelphia beat the Cowboys 34-6. These four dudes are talking about it. All right, you got all the branding, you got the helmets, you got the white, you got the green tie, the green suit. Everybody, AJ Brown in the background. You got something going on. Presented by Bet365. Never ordinary, whatever that means. So here's just a YouTube channel, but look how branded it is. We got four dudes in a room, not separated. These are four Philly dudes, I would guess. right? So look how much progress these people are making. Now the question is, and then you got Dallas, same thing. They got a live video going also. Everybody got live video going on all the time. Is there a game going on? Okay, is there a post game? Is there a pre-game? Is there some kind of something? Look at these two dudes. We got these two Dallas Rangers podcast. Uh, you know, they're the Texas Rangers, but they play around Dallas, so they're calling it Dallas Rangers podcast here. I don't know what's going on. It's not baseball season; it's over, but they're doing a podcast about it. All right, not bad. And so the question really is, this is the way that it's going, and at some point, all of these things are going to conglomerate, and somebody's going to win, and somebody's going to lose. Is Badlands going to win? Is Jet X Factor going to win? Roundtable going to win? Chat Sports? Somebody else? All City Media? But this is the way it's going. People do not want the corporate media anymore. They don't want. They don't want. What they don't want is uh, this bullshit. They don't want this anymore. You could look at it in sports. You could look at it in politics. You could look at it any way you want. People don't want this bullshit anymore. They want something authentic, something real, with real people, with real opinions who are not paid by all of the interests, let's say special interests that pay these people who come on television. I hate to tell you, but all the people you see on television giving you opinions, they're paid to have those opinions. I can show you proof. I can show you 1,000 things that prove this is correct. We don't have time for it because we're coming to the end of this video, but I can just tell you almost all the people you see on your television, if they work for these media companies, have all been bought and paid for. Every opinion they have has been bought and paid for. It's not their authentic opinion like these other dudes. Like this dude here and these four dudes, whatever their opinions are, they're their opinions. I can almost guarantee, I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe these dudes are all paid off. I don't know. But I think these four dudes, just like Green Bean, just like Jets Central, just like Richie, Jets Media, just like Matt and Ryan and all the rest, Gunny, myself, whatever opinions we're telling you about on a video is our opinions. Nobody's paying us to have those opinions because there's no reason to pay us off. Where there's not enough on the line. Probably not enough on the line to pay off this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy. I mean, they're not at that point. Now maybe in 20 or 30 years they might be. And maybe these guys will be the main media and then you'll have to pay them off, try to pay them off because you have something you're trying to get done. And this happens, I guess, probably more in media, but more in politics. But even in sports, agents have a lot on the line. And if you're an influential person, what your opinion is matters. And if you're on the mainstream media, then it makes sense for them to pay you off, and so forth and so on. And so, I don't think. Oh, look, now there's four people here. I don't think these people here. There are their names: Jeff Wilson, John Daniels, Abby Jones, John Radigan. I don't think anybody would get paid off, by big money interest to have an opinion or to express an opinion on television because that would benefit them. Think about how much the agents have on the line. And if you're part of the mainstream media, how tempting it would be to pay off Connor Hughes to say something. For example, uh, 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 Coach Obrecht's prospects as a head coach. If you're Obrecht's agent, wouldn't it make sense to pay off Connor Hughes in some form or fashion? A case of wine, a case of a box of cigars, something to just say, hey, this guy is a legitimate candidate for head coaching. Just get it out there. Wouldn't that pay off? Because after all, he said that, and Jeff Ulbrich has never ever gotten one interview as a head coach, and yet Connor Hughes has gone on the air and gone on record and said, "Boy, this Jeff Ulbrich is such a great candidate to be a next head coach in the NFL." Okay, he's never gotten one interview. So where is this coming from? It's coming from someone who has something to sell. And so we're in a very exciting time, is what I would say. This is dying. This is dying. This is being born. Something's happening right now. I'm alerting you to it. Something's being born. These things are being born. Pay attention, because eventually these things will become the traditional media and it won't be so good no more. But but for now, it's an exciting time. You can get some authentic, real opinions until such time as then that becomes corrupted.
This aspect of careerism that you're describing, I think, is often a very understated factor in why corporate media is so often homogenized, doesn't question anything. It's not a very sexy complaint. It's much kind of more passion-provoking to say, they're right-wing, or they're on the left, or they're pro-war, or whatever. But this careerism aspect, though maybe a little more banal, I think is so crucial. And I have to say, even though I've known this for a long time, the one time I really saw it most vividly is when I began very aggressively and vocally dissenting on the Russiagate narrative, both because I thought it was journalistically baseless, but also because I thought it was so dangerous to play this game of creating this kind of sinister ethos around any communications with Russia. And I would hear from all the time people inside large media corporations, not entry-level journalists, but sort of mid-career, writing to me and saying, oh, I'm so glad you're expressing these doubts. And of course, the subtext was, I can't. And part of me would always say, why can't you? Why don't you? But I know why. It's because the minute they stick their head up with a kind of consolidated media, layoffs, and they're one day yelled at by liberal Twitter or the establishment media of Twitter, they're put first on the list of layoffs and last on the list to hire. It's just very easy to get rid of them for that reason alone. So for me, knowing all this about corporate media, I've always had kind of one foot for a long time in corporate media. Now I'm very much independent media. I always felt like I was a very big booster of independent media. This idea that, independent media is kind of sort of the solution because with technology, it gives a lot of other voices the ability to have a show like this, where ordinarily you would have to have a major television network or a printing press to reach a lot of people. The internet lets you increasingly with a lot of ease reach people in similar ways to the corporate media. Not necessarily the same extent, but in a very influential way. You have, once you left the New York Times, thrived in independent media, and I think there, as enthusiastic as I am, there's still some flaws in it. I know you recently had a situation with your own work, and I want to get to that in a second, but generally speaking, have you seen independent media, meaning journalists and people who work without corporate support and therefore without corporate constraints, as a very promising alternative to or weapon against corporate media, and is that something that you still believe?
I think, there's always been alternative media. We used to have, and I write for Bob Scheer's website, ScheerPost. He used to be the editor of Ramparts. So the role of alternative media is that it always shamed the traditional press into doing their job. That's what Julian Assange and WikiLeaks did, which is why after they had to run his stuff, they turned on him to destroy him, especially The Guardian, Bill Keller at the New York Times, all these kind of figures. If they didn't print the Iraqi war logs, they would have been exposed for who they are. But immediately, once that they did publish that material, they were part of that massive effort to the character assassination against Julian, the demonization of Julian. So that's a good example of the role of the alternative media. For instance, Ramparts published that iconic photo of the little girl running down the road in Vietnam who was being burned by napalm. That was Ramparts. COINTELPRO, that all came out in the alternative. Cy Hirsch, My Lai. So the role that you play, Matt Taibbi, others play, is that they do real journalism, and you have this dynamic where the traditional or the commercial press, which posits itself as objective and fair and unbiased and all this kind of stuff. On the one hand, they have to respond to alternative media, and on the other hand, they loathe it because it exposes much of their moral bankruptcy. I think
Season 5 gets a bad rap, and I won't argue that it's the lowest quality season of The Wire. The departure of Ed Burns from the writing staff weakened the writing team, and it shows in an attention to detail and realism in storytelling that doesn't quite live up to the standard of past seasons. That said, Season 5 is still a critical part of the narrative that The Wire is constructing. It shows why media, when it looks at everything that the previous seasons examined, also fails to create meaningful change. In many ways, I think the narrative of the newspaper in Season 5 is a reflection of many of the struggles The Wire itself faced. Here you have a TV show that is attempting to seriously examine real difficult themes, and it's completely overlooked by the industry awards in favor of more sensational content. Just like the stories that are being considered for awards in Season 5 are the more sensational stories instead of the more important ones.
Non-pertinent? How do you log that non-pertinent?
No drug talk?
They use codes to hide their patron phone numbers. And when someone does use a phone, they don't use names. And if someone does use a name, he's reminded not to. All of that is valuable evidence.
Of what?
Conspiracy.
Conspiracy?
We're building something here, Detective. We're building it from scratch. All the pieces matter.